Okay, we're up to Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Beis. We are 4 lines from the bottom. Tanu Rabbanan. The Gemara says like this. We'll run through there's a quick end of this sugya, and then there's a whole new topic that we're going to be doing with today's daf. We mentioned yesterday that if a gedi or a kelev jump off a small little platform, a bunch of chairs, whatever, it doesn't have to be a roof, and they break kalim, that's regel because that's very normal. Obviously, if it's abnormal, it's keren, but this is normal. It's normal for goats and dogs jump. That's normal for them, and therefore it's going to be under the category of regel. So Taner Rabbanon hakelev agdisha dilgu mimata lamayla peturim milmayla lamata chayavin. If they jump from high to low, that's normal and chayav for regel. But if they jump from low to high, so let's say they're on the ground and there's a stack of chairs, and on top of it is a glass bottle, and they jump on that, that's potter. So by the way, the Gemara, I'll just spoil it for you. The Gemara says, why would it be potter? It's keren, so she chayiv nezek, chatzi nezek, right? It's definitely damage. So potter nezek shalom, chayiv chatzi nezek. So that's okay, fine. So it's potter because jumping up is abnormal for these animals. Jumping down is normal. Okay. Says the Gemara, Adam v'tarnagol shel dilgu bein milmayla lamata bein milmata lamayla chayavin. But if a person jumps, whether it's from low to high or high to low, you're chayiv, because people don't have it's its own category. Adam is its own category. We don't.
What about the tarnagol?
So and chickens jump. That's normal. Chickens jump up, down, up, down. It's all normal. Chicken, there's no distinction in direction. Okay. So now we said for a dog and a goat, down normal, up not normal. Here's the problem. This brisa says that if a dog or a goat jumps down, it's abnormal. Right? We said before, jumping up is abnormal, but jumping down is normal. This brisa says peturim. So it's abnormal. So is jumping down abnormal or is jumping down normal by a goat and a dog? Our brisa said it's normal. This brisa says not normal. So which one is it? So the answer is Targum Rav Papa de apich meipach. It's not the jumping; it's how they jumped. Apparently, goats just go for it. Dogs will go to the edge and then hop. The case where it's normal is where the dog and goat jump the way they normal jump, which is a goat jumping and a dog. I think they call it scurrying. Kalva bizkira. The gadya bisrika. I'm sorry, the opposite. Dogs just jump, and goats go to the edge and then jump. So what's normal is for an animal to jump the way they normally jump. Abnormal it's the same direction. It's jumping down, which is normally normal, but they're jumping in an abnormal way. No, I'm sorry, I was right the first time. Dogs inch to the edge and then jump off. Goats just go for it. That's normal. The brisa that says that the chayiv is where they jump in a normal way. The brisa that say potter is the weiter jumping down, but the dog is jumping like a goat, and the goat is jumping like a dog. So it's just jumping in a different way than their species normally acts. Okay. Now, the Gemara just clarifies something that I said before. It said that if the dog jumps in an abnormal way, it's potter. Why should it be potter? It should be chayiv chatzi nezek. Abnormal is keren. So yachi amai peturim. The answer is potter menezek shalom chayiv chatzi nezek. The answer is you're potter from nezek shalom, but you're chayiv chatzi nezek. Okay. Now we're up to the sugya of today's daf. It's going to carry us through the rest of the daf. It's in Lumdis. It's years in yeshiva. There's a famous Rav Chaim about it. Basically, the shayla is like this. Why is a person chayiv for fire? There's 2 ways to look at it. Ishoy mishum chatzioy or ishoy mishum memoinai. Because if you think about it, you make a fire and then it goes. So you're responsible for the entire field that it burns down. The question is, what is my action? How does my action affect? And don't say, well, you caused it, because that's grama. Grama is not, I'm talking about yechayiv, nezek shalom, yechayiv for a person. So what's the pshat? So there's 2 ways to look at it. Isha mishum chatzioy, which means that your fire is like an arrow. Right? You take a bullet and you shoot it. You're chayiv a death penalty. I didn't kill it, right? Bullets kill, not people, right? What's the answer? The answer is the Torah says that if you do this action that causes damage, that's ki'ilu you did it b'yadayim. So isha mishum chatzioy, which means the same way by a bullet, your koyach is. You're responsible for your koyach, so too you're responsible for your fire's koyach. Or, isha mishum mamoinai. It's not that it's like an arrow, But the same way, I have an ox that gores and I have to pay for it because he's my property. So to a fire is your property. That's the two ways to look at it. One of the major nafkaminas, like the major nafkamina of the daf between these two views, there are a couple. But the first major nafkamina is, what if I don't own the fire? I take your fire, right? You have a candle that you own. I take it and I will light the field on fire. So if it's isha mishum chetziyoi, if it's because I'm chayv, because if it's a bullet, does it matter if I own the gun or not? No, I cause damage the same way a bullet. I'd be responsible. I don't have to own the bullet to get the death penalty. So too, I don't have to own the coal. But if it's isha mishum mamayna, if I'm responsible, the same way I'm responsible for my ox. Well, it's not my ox. You understand? It's not my ox today, and therefore I'm not responsible. That would be the major nafkamina between whether isha mishum chetziyai or isha mishum mamayna, and that is if I don't own the coal or if I don't own the torch. If you hold isha mishum chetziyai, if the reason why you're responsible by fire is because it's your bullet, it's because you shot a bullet, just in the form of fire, it doesn't matter whether you own the bullet or not. You're responsible for that action. If it's isha mishum mamayna, if it's that because when you make a fire, we look at the fire as if it's your ox, well, it's not my ox. It's like someone else's ox does damage. It's like I push the ox in that direction. I'm not responsible for that. That is the major nafkamina between isha mishum chetzi, isha mishum mamayna, as we'll dive right in. Okay. Hakel v'shenotal itmar. Rabbi Yochanan Amar. Rabbi Yochanan introduces the new concept: isha mishum chetziyai. A person is responsible for a fire that he makes because it's mishum chetziyai. It's his bullet. It's his arrow. The same way, it's a koyach, it's a force that you generated, and the same way you're responsible for a generation of when you generate a bullet being fired, you're responsible for a fire being created. Rish Lakish says, no, isha mishum mamayna. The fire is your property, and the same way you're responsible for your property, so too you're responsible for the fire that you created. Again, the nafkamina between these two things is, I'll tell you two nafkaminas from today's daf. The first one is if I don't own the fire. That's the first nafkamina. The second nafkamina would be, what if I make a fire and it burns down a field? In the middle of the field, there's a person. Right? Do I get the death penalty? Let's say there's an eved. There's an eved in the field. Eved kind of eved. So they get the death penalty. And the nafkamina, besides for do I get the death penalty, am I potter from all monetary payment? Because kimli b'derabmina, we know you get the death penalty. If it's isha mishum chetziyai, you take a bullet, you're going to get the death penalty. If it's isha mishum mamayna, then it's just my property. If my ox gores someone, I don't get the death penalty. So that could be potentially one nafkamina, as we'll see in today's daf. Okay. Before we get to the nafkamina, let's just analyze why they don't like each other's opinions. Reish Lakish might tell me Why do Reish Lakish not like Rav Yechanan's statement of saying that it's a bullet, an arrow? He says, He says, well, it's different. An arrow, right? When you shoot an arrow, your force pushes the arrow. A fire, it's wind. It's happening not in your koyach. So he feels that that's not a fair comparison. It's more removed. A bullet, at least it's your koyach. You pull the trigger. Over here, you started a fire, right over here, and then Hashem, a wind just takes it. It's not exactly the same. So Rish Lakish does not like calling that an arrow. It's not an arrow. An arrow moves because of your koyach. Over here, it's moving because of God's koyach. It's not the same. Rav Yochanan doesn't like Rish Lakish. Why not? Why doesn't he like saying that it's your property? The answer is because it's not your property. Your property you own. This is fire. I don't own. There's no mamash to fire. He said, "What do you mean? I own the fire. What do I own? It's nothing. You can't bottle fire. It's not something you could. It's not mama. It's not mamashes. It's nothing. Okay. So Tanan. I just want to say we're up to Tanan. We're about a third of the way down. First one in the line is Tanan and Chav Beis Amud Aleph. Tanan. Hakeler shenot charara. Oh, what did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said a dog takes a biscuit that has a coal on it. So I own the fire. Your dog takes the biscuit, runs away, puts the biscuit down, and eats it. So it's chayiv shein on the biscuit. The coal then makes a whole fire. Chayiv chatzi nezek because it's tzroiris on the fire. Let me ask you a question. Your dog made a fire, and you're paying for it, but it's not your coal. It's my coal, right? The dog took my coal and made a fire, and you're paying for it. That's a raya. That's isha mishum chetzia. Because if isha is mishum mamana, I told you the nafkamina between these two sheets is what if you create a fire, you spread a fire that's not yours. If isha mishum chetzia, you're going to be responsible. If isha mishum mamana, you're not going to be responsible. In this case, you're paying for the fire your dog spread, but it's not his father. It's not your dog's coal. It's my coal. So if it's isha mishum chetzia, it makes sense. But if it's mishum mamana, why are you paying for it? So the Gemara says, if you understand that the reason why you pay for a fire is because it's your arrow, okay, so the dog pulled the trigger. The dog pulled the trigger. That's what happened. And you got to be responsible for your dog. But if you're responsible because it's your property, it's not your property, you don't own the coal, I own the coal. It's not yours, so why are you paying? So you know what the Gemara says? You don't pay. You actually don't pay for the fire. When the Mishnah says that you pay half damages, it doesn't actually mean that you pay half damages for the actual fire that's spread. You pay for the spot that the coal was thrown to. The dog took the coal and threw it. Took the biscuit and threw it in an abnormal way. You're responsible for that spot because that spot is chatzin nezek tzroris. The subsequent fire that spread, that's ishay mishum mamoinai, and it's actually not your mammon, so you actually don't have to pay. So when the Mishnah says you have to pay, you don't have to pay for the actual fire being spread. You just have to pay for the spot that dog, because that spot the dog did. But the subsequent fire, that's ishay mishum mamoinai, and it's not your mammon.
Yes, that goes against the idea of that it's because of being an arrow.
Correct. Yeah, no, this is how Rish Lakish, who looks at his Isha Mishemani, that's how he interprets the Mishnah. So the Gemara says, no, the other sheet is, Rav Yochanan is very beautiful. You ate the coal, you ate the biscuit, you pay for the biscuit, Shane, the fire spreads, that's Chai Mishem Ishay, because Ishay Mishem Chatziyai, and you'll pay half because it's considered technically tzroris, because he didn't do a biyadayim. Okay, it makes a lot of sense. But Rish Lakish, you shouldn't have to pay for the fire. The answer is you don't pay for the fire. The Mishnah says you pay for the fire. The Mishnah means you pay for the spot that the biscuit fell on, because that's biyadayim. But the subsequent spread of the fire, that's Isha Mishem Memainai, and it's not your moment. You'd be potter. You actually be potter for the fire, due to a technicality. Says the Mishnah, says the Gemara, Amlach Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says, this is how you're supposed to read the Mishnah. The dog tossed the biscuit onto the stack, which is an abnormal thing to do, so it's Karen. Everyone agrees that the biscuit you pay Nezek Shalom because that's shame. On the spot that the dog threw the biscuit, that spot itself is not Ishay. That's actual Nezek because it's considered tzroris on that spot. And the subsequent fire that burned down two buildings, al gdish kulei potter. You're actually potter. That's because again, ishay mishum mamayna, and it's not your mammon. Yeah, this is Rish Lakish. This is Rish Lakish talking. Rav Yochanan says no. Rav Yochanan holds isha mishum chetzia. He has a very simple way of reading the Mishnah. Anche anuche. You left the biscuit down. The dog put the biscuit down in a normal way. And therefore, because it was normal, the biscuit and the spot, you pay Nezek Shalim. And when the Mishnah says Chazi Nezek, it means for the entire fire. Because the entire fire is Isha Mishem Chatziyai, and it's tzroris, you pay half damages. Perfect. That's just two ways to look at the Mishnah. Okay, let's keep going. Tashima. Okay. This is a Mishnah that we'll get to in like a month and a half. Gamal Ta'un Pishtun. So basically the case is like this. You have a camel walking with a giant thing of flax on its back. And it walks past a store that has selling candles. And the candles ignite the flax. While the camel's walking, the fire spreads. So who has to pay? So the rule is whoever is pesheya. So what do you mean? I'm walking with my camel. So basically like this. If the stack is so big that the camel's flax went into the store, that's on the camel driver, because the camel driver, you should say to the camel driver, what do you have such a big bag for that it goes into a store? So you're peshe, you have to pay. If the fire is outside, the guy, instead of leaving the candle in his store, he for some reason left the candle on Main Street because he wanted to attract customers, then he's peshe. Okay, let me ask you a question. Except for Hanukkah, because as the Gemara is going to say, Hanukkah is an mitzvah, it's not a psheh. Here's the kasha. Let's go to the first case. I'm walking with my camel, giant thing. It goes into the store, catches on fire, keeps going. I have to pay. Why? It's not my candle. Again, I make the fire. It's not my moment. I should be potter. It's the same kasha. It's according to Rish Lakish. I didn't understand the mission. Let's see it inside. Tashima, Gamal Ton Pishtan v'Avar B'Shus Harabim. You have a camel filled with flax that goes through B'Shus Harabim. Nichlasa Pishtan L'Techachanus. Now, if the flax was so big that it went into the store, V'Dolku V'Ner Shel and it caught fire based on the light of the store, there was a candle inside the store. So the store owner did nothing wrong. You did something wrong by having such a big bundle. Hidlik Sabira, and then it went and burned down a mansion outside. Baal Gamal Chayiv, you have to pay. It's not your fire. Okay, we'll have to deal with that in a second. But if the shopkeeper left the candle outside on Main Street, so then he's pshia, then he's chayiv. Rav Yehuda Omer b'ner Chanukah potter, except for ner Chanukah, because ner Chanukah you're supposed to be lighting it outside. It's not a pshia. That's where you're supposed to be lighting. Okay. The first case where my camel, the flax gets caught on the candle inside the store, and then my camel spreads the flames. I have to pay. Why? According to Rav Yochanan, that Isham Isham Chetzi, that it's a bullet. So Chetzi the Gamalu. So my camel pulled the trigger. Okay. But if you understand that the chiyuv of fire is because it's my property that I'm spreading, meaning I make a fire, so it's my property. In the same way, if my ox were to gore, I'm responsible. So too, if my fire were to spread it, I'm responsible. But here, it's not my fire. It's not the Baal Gamal's fire. It's the Chenveni's fire. So what's the pshat? Amar lach Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish responds, you know what the case is? The fire didn't spread in the classic way. When the fire, if I start a fire here, on this spot, and then it goes and goes and goes and goes and burns, let's say the fire is on this table, I make a fire here, and then it goes to the entire next table. So that's a shayla, if that table, if I take a match, and I light a spot on fire, the spot that I light is definitely mazik biyadayim. That's not a shayla. The shayla is where it spreads. The case is, the Bala Gamal, his flax bundle got caught on fire. So you think the case is that the flax thing got caught on fire, a spark flew, and then it kept on going. No. The animal with the fire on its back walked around the building and mushed the fire on the walls. So it was biyadayim. It's not Isha Mishim Chetzi, it's not Isha Mishim Moina. Isha Mishim Chetzi, Isha Mishim Moina is only when the fire spreads on its own. Here the Bala Gamal did it biyadayim. The Gamal did it biyadayim. The Gamal was literally rubbing the fire on all four corners of the building. So that's why you're chayiv.
Again, why is that different than if it's just...
Because when it's done by the animal on the spot, then that's a hezek of the animal. The same way the animal can gore, the animal can also bite, and the animal can push fire against you. That's not the shayla. Our shayla is where the fire spreads on its own. And the question is, why am I responsible for a God-made action? The answer is, because it's like pulling a trigger, or it's you made a property and then you're responsible. So over here, if you hold its property, it's not the Baal Gamal's fire. The answer is, the Baal Gamal, the fire never spread like that. The fire was spread by the Baal Gamal rubbing his back all over the walls. So okay, if that's the case, then wait a minute. What's the next case? The Gamal, same Gamal, walking, but the candle's outside. Mm-hmm. My animal gets caught on fire, he has to pay. But if the case is where my Gamal's rubbing his back all over the place, then at least split it. They're both b'sheya. Yes, I understand he shouldn't be putting his candle outside, but I shouldn't allow my camel to rub his back on a building. So the Gemara says, if my camel is spreading its back, so what's the answer? The answer is the second case is not where the camel is pushing its back. Bisha'amda. The second case is where the Gamal, the Gamal is meaning the Gamal just stood there. The Gamal just stood there. It didn't actually spread its back. It just had such a big load that, so therefore like this. So the first case is my animal rubbing its back. Fine. The second case is my animal's walking. It gets caught on fire by you're the Bal Chenveni. You leave the fire outside. So that's a stupid move on your part. You're pesheya. My animal gets caught on fire and then it stops. And it's such a big load, it catches on fire. Wait a minute. Your animal stopped. That's also a pshia. Your animal's on fire and it stops, and you're just like, this is a good place to rest, right in front of the fireworks factory. Like, hey, come on, let's go. Get it to move. It's a weiter pshia. You let your animal stop in front of a flammable building? That's also pshia. So the Gemara says, that's also pshia. The answer is, no, the animal stopped to urinate. It's not my problem. That's not, if I stop my animal catches on fire because of your pshia, the animal stops, get caught on fire because of your pshia, and then I just say, stop here. Okay, then that's a pshia on mine. But the case is, the animal stopped on its own to urinate.
Why is the fire not considered each flame a new flame?
That's the point. Even if it is, then why is it chayiv? You're right. The answer is isha mishum chetzioi or isha mishum moina. You need that. That's exactly the point. When fire spreads, it's a new entity. So why am I chayiv? The answer is isha mishum chetzioi, isha mishum moina. The real shaila is there's a ran.
So if it's mishum chetzioi, but still. It's like it stops every dollar. It stops.
Yeah, but the same way you pull a bullet, did you actually do it biyadayim? No, but that's enough to be responsible. So too, starting a fire, knowing that the way God created fire is that it will be created, however you understand how fire is, blessed by mamasha. That's enough that the Torah says you can be responsible. The shayla, so the Ran says that this is the same reason why you're chayiv on Shabbos, right? You create a fire on Shabbos and then it spreads. It's a chil Shabbos. So the kasha is, so then if you light, wait a minute. If I light a fire and then it goes, the answer is, why am I responsible if it keeps going? The answer is, you see from this, it's ki'ilu, when you did this, it's ki'ilu, all the subsequent actions are sort of like encompassed in your action. So the Ran says, if that's the case, then how are you ever yoytze hadlakas neiris on Erev Shabbos? What was his cheshbon? I have to check it up inside, but I think his cheshbon is like if you light the candle Erev Shabbos, then it's ki'ilu. It was nigmar on Erev Shabbos. So I have to check it up. I'll check it up for tomorrow, Bez Hashem. Just remind me, there's a famous Iran that talks about the chiluk between fire on Shabbos and hadlakas neiris. Okay, let's go weiter. Yeah. So go to the next page. So now we summarize the opinion. In the first case, the shopkeeper is the Baal Gamel is chayiv because he shouldn't have had such a big load on his back. And the second, he's responsible because he put the fire outside. Okay.
Why can't he put a lot of things on the animal's back?
If it's so big that it goes into my shop, that you're responsible. Now, one more concept, and this, as I said before, is the second nafkamina between Isha Mishum Chetzia, Isha Mishum Amoinai, and that is that what if I make a fire, and in middle of the fire, it kills a person, and so am I responsible? Do I get the death penalty? If Isha Mishum Chetzia, absolutely. If Isha Mishum Amoinai, then isn't it the same as if my ox gored someone, which is, you're not going to get the death penalty, it's just nezek. So then I should be responsible. So it says like this. Tashma, there's a Mishnah. The Mishnah says later on, you make a fire, yeah. Hayagadi kafuslai, and there was a goat bound to the wood. So you're killing that goat for sure. But Evid samuchlai, and there was an Evid nearby. So the Evid is not bound to the fire. He could have ran out, but he didn't. V'nisraf imai, and so I make a fire, it kills the goat, and it kills the Evid. What's the halacha chayiv? I am responsible to pay for the goat and for the stack of wood. Why? I give the death penalty? The answer is, I'm not going to give the death penalty because I never killed the person. L'kuli alma, the person was not bound to the wood. He could have gotten away. Because he didn't, that's his problem, not mine. There's no chi of misa in this case, l'kuli alma, and therefore there's a chi of mammon. But Eved kafas lai ugadi samach lai. But what if the opposite case? The case is where the Eved was actually bound to the wood. So by you making this fire, there was no chance of him surviving. You killed him through fire. What's the halacha? V'nisraf imai. Potter, you are not responsible for the wood, you're not responsible for the goat. Why? Because you're going to get the death penalty. Kim le'b'deramine. But wait a minute. This concept that you're going to get the death penalty for the fire that you made. If it killed someone, that makes sense if you hold Isha Mishum Chetzia because then you pull the trigger. Mishum Hachi Potter, and therefore, because you get the death penalty, you're Potter from damages, from monetary damages. But if you're Chayiv for the fire, because it's your property, so Mamayna am I Potter? Ilu Kotel Ture Avda if my ox gores a slave and kills it, you don't think that I would have to, I'm not getting the death penalty for that. So if my fire kills a slave, I should also not give the death penalty for that. So why am I getting the death penalty in this case if you hold Isha Misham? So the answer is, the case is not where it was killed by the subsequent fire. Again, the Machlokes Rav Yochanan Rish Lakish is where you start a fire and then it spreads. Why am I responsible for the spreading? The case is you lit the guy on fire. If you lit the guy on fire, that's miyadayim, then that's misa mamish. Then there's no question. Kimle b'deramine. Oh, so wait. So you're telling me? So what's the case of the Mishnah? The case of the Mishnah is I go to a fire, I burn an eved alive, I kill him. So I get chiv misa because I killed a eved knani, and I'm potter for the field. Okay, so that's a classic kimle b'deramine. That's like that's a classic pshita. Am I remember what's the chiddush? If that's just basically every kimle b'deramine we've ever had. The answer is the answer is that they're owned by different people. The eved and the goat are not owned by the same people. And the chiddush is that there's kimle b'deramine even when there's different ownership. Meaning, you could look at it as if you killed somebody, right? The classic kimle b'deramine is you shoot somebody, so you kill him and you ripped his shirt. Okay, so there's this. It's the same person that you damaged. You just damaged him monetarily and misadik. So halach is you don't have to pay. Over here, I killed an eved that belonged to John, and I burned a goat that belonged to Reuven. So I might think, I forgot about the names. The point is, I might think that because they're owned by different people, there's no kim d'ramine. You got to get the misa for him and pay for that person. Make sure they're both whole. Kamash will know. Kim d'ramine means that the Torah will not require you to get two different punishments for one action. It doesn't matter who owns what. It doesn't matter how many victims are involved. You're not going to get multiple punishments. You're going to get the worst punishment, and that'll pat you for the lesser punishment. Okay, one last sugya, and this we've had recently, so it flow pretty quickly. Tashima. If I give a fire to a cheir shaita v'katan, and then they spread the fire, I'm not responsible for what they did. Now I'm going to be chayiv in din shemayim. Shemayim will punish me, but I am not chayiv in bezdin. Oh, so the Gemara says. Exactly. If you understand that every fire is a bullet, so it makes sense. I didn't pull the trigger. The cheir didn't pull the trigger. So yeah, maybe I gave him a gun. It's not a good idea to give them a gun, but I didn't do this. That makes sense. I'm not responsible. But if you actually say that the fire is my property, let me ask you a question. If you give an ox to a cheir shaita v'katan, and the ox gores, of course you have to pay. So why wouldn't I have to pay by the fire? What would be the difference? If you give an ox to a cheir shaita v'katan, which is your mammon, you're responsible. But if I give a fire, which is also your mammon, what's the difference? So what's the difference between fire and an ox? So if you remember, we had this, we had this recently, maybe a week ago, and the distinction is, there's a chilik. It depends what the case is. So says the Gemara, Rish Lakish already explained this case, and that is, Rish Lakish says, you know what the case is? You didn't give them a fire. You gave them a coal, which on its own will naturally die. The cheir shaita v'katan blew on it. Meaning, the case where you give them an ox, right, according to Rish Lakish, what's the difference between an ox, which is mammon, and fire, which is mammon? The answer is you didn't give them a fire. If you would have given them a fire, you would be chayiv. The case is you gave them a coal, which on its own is not capable of damaging. The cheir shaita v'katan blew on it. So he created the mazik. That's why you're responsible. Says Rish Lakish, the case is where you gave him a coal, and he had to blow on it to create an ember, to create a flame. But says Rish Lakish, you know what? If you taka gave him a fire itself, chayiv, of course you'd be chayiv, because you gave him a mazik. My time of bari azeka, because you gave him a damage that's ready to happen. Rav Yochanan responds, no, afilu shall have his potter. Rav Yochanan says, I actually think that even if you gave them a fire, it's potter. And what's the difference between a fire and an ox? The difference is, the ox is your property, and a fire is a bullet. You didn't pull the bullet. They did. They spread the flame. Rav Yochanan mafil shabbos potter. Kasavet savsid the chayrish kagarim. Now lemechayev at the masle gavna silta v'sharga. Rav Yochanan does say, I do acknowledge that you're responsible if you gave them a flame and kindling, because that's too much. Now that's already, you have to understand exactly what the difference is. So Rishonim are bothered by that. But he's saying like this: it's not my responsibility. That's their actions. Unless you give them that, I guess then you look at it as like a command, so to speak. If you give them, okay. Let's just finish up the daf. Amar Rava Kra Umasisa Masela Rav Yochanan. There's a pasuk and there's a brisa that backs up Rav Yochanan on the Ishay Mishum Chatziyah. Kra Ksiv. The pasuk says Ki Seitzei Eish. If a fire will go forth, Seitzei Me'atzma. It means to go forth on its own. Meaning, even if it goes forth on its own, Yeshalim Hamaver Sabeira. The person shall pay Shma Mina Ishay Mishum Chatziyah. Meaning, the implication of the fire, the pasuk is Ki Seitzei Eish. It doesn't have to be you own the fire. As long as you spread the fire, you're going to be responsible. So you see that it doesn't have to be, meaning even if I take my neighbor's fire and I say eish, I cause it to go further, I'm going to be responsible. So there's a right to Rav Yochanan, you don't have to actually own the fire, because Isha Mishum Chetzi, not Isha Mishum Amayne. And Masnisan, there's a brisa that says Mefurish. What does the brisa say? Pasach HaKasa, the brisa says. The pasuk begins with Benizke Amayne, with your property. V'sayim, but the pasuk ends benizke gufay, with damage inflicted by the person. Loy melach ishay mishum chatzia. The pasuk, let me just see Rashi. We'll end with this. Rashi says, a pasuk benizke memoinoi. Rashi says, d'chsiv ki seitzei eish, the mashma atzma. Eish implies that it's on its own, but then it says nizke gufay ma'avir, that you did it. So what's the answer? And it says even if it's on its own, it's kilu ma'avir biyadayim, which is ishay mishum chatzia. We'll stop. Pick it up tomorrow.